Welcome to the HCC Principal Coffee Meeting. Today, Dr. Lamy is going to be talking about the school's budget. I'm Kenzie Leach. And I'm Amelia Athens. And we will be in HCC next year.
Nice, thank you. We'll take it over for a second and then we'll get started on our budget meeting. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you guys so much. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Want to mention Scott Levy's here. Thank you so much for being here. Trustee of the Board of Education takes great care of us. Before the budget presentation begins, we wanted to just highlight a few things that are happening. We want to thank all the parents who volunteered for the 8th grade Washington trip. After a few desperate emails, we have enough, and it happens, every once in a while that happens, so it's just thanks for the responsiveness. We leave in 2 weeks. We go to DC for 3 days together. 3
fun-filled days.
It really is fun-filled. So
it is.
Really.
It is.
And then we do have also the Boston trip, which is at the end of the month. We go on an overnight with 7th grade to Boston, another great trip. So we're very fortunate to have the support of the district and parents and also the teachers. It is a hard job being one of the advisors. There's a lot of planning involved. So we also want to make sure that we thank, for the DC trip, it's Mrs. Ferraro and Mrs. Berner. They do a lot of work to make sure that the trip is ready and going to be a great trip for the kids. And then for Boston, we want to thank Mrs. Veza and also Mrs. Pace. They have taken the lead. And again, we always say this, out of COVID, we didn't know how it would be. It is just as good as it's ever been, if not better. So we also have the math assessments, the New York State math assessments coming up next week. Mr. Ancona, do you want to say anything about it?
So the math assessments are Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And just like we did 2 weeks ago with the ELA, they're all going to be, students are going to be taking them on their Chromebooks. I don't need that.
Yep.
On their Chromebooks. Students do not need calculators for it. The calculators are provided in the program. And we also have coming up the 6th grade pancake breakfast in May, which is another fundraiser for the 6th graders trip to Boston next year.
And it's a community builder. The kids love serving the food and welcoming community members. So the event itself is a lot of fun as well. I think that's it. We're here for the big show, which is Dr. Lamia, Mr. Seibert. So we're going to hand it over and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And thank you again. Can't wait for you guys to come up and visit when we're out in Washington.
Well, we'll be meeting with you in a few minutes about
Yes.
the 5th grade orientation day. So yes, thank you for coming, everyone. Today we have our 2024-25 budget presentation. Okay. You will see that our administration's proposed budget for 2024-25 is $103,464,726. That's a budget-to-budget increase of over $3.7 million or 3.75%. Okay, what does the budget include? We care very much that we have all programs and services that support our student success. And as you know, in Byram Hills, that means that we are always looking forward to the future for our students and what opportunities we want to make available to them. And we are careful and methodical about that, and that gets covered in our budget. All of our state and federally mandated programs, all of our athletic programs remain. And we say remain, but the programs that we have, whether they're extracurricular in athletics or extracurricular academic programs or our regular academic programs, it's not just that they remain, it's that we enhance them. All extracurricular and all transportation services remain. We are a fortunate district in that we own our own transportation fleet, which does make our lives a lot easier when it comes to all of the additional programs that we like to offer. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
And there's 3 components for the school budget. There's the program, which is the largest component. It's the salary, benefits, equipment, supplies for instructional staff, essentially, your teachers, your psychologists, including your bus drivers, all that. That's 72.7%. The next is the capital component, 15.4. That's everything kind of associated with your buildings, your custodial and maintenance staff, your debt service, your utilities, and any maintenance in the building. That's capital component. Think of it as the buildings. And then finally, administrative is everything pretty much supervisory. Your principals, your APs, your directors, your chairs, central office, legal, auditing, property insurance, everything like that is the administrative category, and that's almost 12%, 11.9. Okay. So here's a little further breakdown in terms of expenses, how our funds are spent. The majority of our expenses are salary and benefits, almost 80%. Any school districts between 75 and 80%. Usually it's depending on if you own your transportation or not. So ours is 78.7% for next year. The next largest component is contractual services. The easy way to think about this is anything we can't do ourselves. We need to contract out. That includes BOCES, any repairs that we can't do in-house.
Major HVAC.
Professional development, anything not in-house. That's almost 14%, 13.9. Our next biggest category is supplies and equipment, 2.6% of the budget, and that's everybody in the district, their supplies and equipment. 2.4% is our debt service. We have 2 more years left of debt service payment, so that's 2.4% of the budget next year.
On a bond that was taken out when I was in my 20s.
That's right, not too long ago. Right. Maintenance project at 1.8%. Byram Hills is great in terms of maintaining our buildings. We do it within the budget. You see a lot of districts defer their maintenance for 5, 6, 10 years, and they come with a big project. They have $20 million to replace a boiler or a roof, some renovations. The district does it in-house on a yearly basis just to eliminate that need for a big bond project. We'll do a portion of the roof here at the middle school. We'll do a boiler at a different school in the budget on a yearly basis, so we eliminate that need for big bond work. And then finally, 0.7% for our vehicles, just maintaining our vehicles and replacing our buses on a yearly basis. We have a cycle of buses. We like to keep them between 10 and 15 years. We replace them on a yearly basis based on their useful life. Okay. So that's the total amount in terms of expenditures. If you go to the next slide, just hot off the presses here is our revenue. So this presentation has changed. The New York State budget finally got completed last week, so we got our information on Friday. I'll get a little into it on the next slide, but just in terms of a whole, unfortunately, we only received 4.5%, a little less than 5% of state aid. The majority of our revenue comes from our local taxpayers, at 87.5%. Payment in lieu of taxes at 2.5%. We currently have 2 pilots, IBM and Ingle Berman. Essentially, a pilot is a company goes to the town, county, wants to make an agreement in terms of the taxes on a 5 to 7-year period usually. So they have a set amount or a set amount with an escalation going forward. So we have 2 of those current pilots right now. Again, IBM and Ingle Berman. Fund balance and reserve appropriation to balance the budget, 3.7, and finally 1.8% other revenue. Other revenue is we get a portion of county sales tax and our interest earning on a yearly basis. We do get some earnings throughout the year based on small amount of earnings on other things. Go ahead.
Okay, next slide.
And here's a breakdown in terms of the numbers. Something that changed since our last board meeting, last presentation, our property tax, in terms of our total tax levy, decreased. It was 3.3% in our prior presentations. When we got the final state aid run, our building aid increased. We had an additional project that got on our building aid. The prior run in January didn't have that project. It was the water main over at Coleman Hill. So that project got included. We got a little more aid, so that reduced our number. So our max instead of 3.3 is 3.28. Our payment of lieu of taxes, an increase here, 11%. Other revenue, an increase of 55%, a large increase. Again, we county sales tax, we've been getting that pretty consistently in the last 3 years, so I've increased that assumption. And then our interest rates, we have excellent interest rates our last couple of years, so I've increased that as well, just conservatively increased that for next year. The good news, state aid, again, the budget finally finalized in New York State. There was some talk, and this previous presentation showed a large decrease in state aid. The governor had a proposal to reduce our foundation aid district, statewide. Fortunately, our legislatures fought that back, and we were able to keep our foundation aid. So we're not getting any more than we did last year, but we're not losing. We're keeping the same amount. Okay. Past 2 years, we've gotten 3% increase on that foundation aid. This year, it's not. It's flat. It's frozen. So there is a small reduction of $120,000. That's just based on last year we didn't purchase any buses. We started to look at electrification of our buses, so we did a study this year into next year. So we didn't purchase any buses last year. Fortunately, we're in that zone where COVID hit, and we got another year out of those buses, which we would have had to replace last year. So small reduction in terms of state aid, again, mostly transportation based on buses. And then finally, fund balance and reserves, just an additional $50,000 from our fund balance reserve from the prior year to balance the budget on a yearly basis. Okay. So that's in terms of the revenue. Expense, this is the revenue side, how it's paid for. Go ahead. So again, these rates changed as well with the maximum allowable tax levy went down from 3.3 last time we spoke to 2.28. Yeah, 2.28, sorry. So these are the tax rates based on the town you live. The majority of our property lives within the town of North Castle. Second highest being Mount Pleasant. So an increase of taxes of less than 5% over at North Castle, 1.9% at Newcastle. Bedford decrease of 2.08, and Mount Pleasant a decrease of 4.38. You want to go to the next slide? So this is a breakdown that shows you just the variation based on the amount of the tax levy on a yearly basis, tax rate.
So you may look at Mount Pleasant, for example. If you live in Mount Pleasant, you might say, okay, so it was an increase of 5.39, 3.6, 5.89, 0.4. Now we're seeing a decrease. Like, why is it like that? And that is based upon the assessed value, not the market value, not what you could sell your house for, but the assessed value of your homes in those towns at the time that this is created, right? So there is an equalization rate that occurs. So let's say in Mount Pleasant, for all of these years, there were very high assessed values of homes. That means a lot of homes sold for a lot of money, right? So the assessed value was increased for those homes. Now, you may see right here with 4.98, the assessed values of the homes in North Castle is actually on the rise. So these fluctuations occur because of these assessed values and because everybody pays into the whole. The assessed values, when they're higher, are going to yield a higher increase for that particular part of town. This wouldn't exist if we all came from just North Castle or all from Mount Pleasant or all from Bedford. But because we are 4 towns feeding in, there's an equalization rate that occurs and that changes the taxes. So you may say, wow, you know, like, so in this year it was 5.89. If you take a look at North Castle, the increases have been very low up until this point. So that all depends on that equalization rate.
And just to add one thing, which is that the district doesn't set these
Yeah,
rates.
we don't
It's
do
given
that.
to us.
The next thing I was
We
gonna
set
say.
the overall tax levy, and then the state ultimately decides, based on all these assessed values, how it's going to be divided up between the towns.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. So what have we done with our maximum allowable tax levy? You'll see that in all of these years, this is the maximum that we were allowed to levy in taxes. And this is the final amount that we proposed as our tax levy. So for all of these years, we have remained this percentage below what could have been taxed. Now, most school districts would say you should always go up to the tax levy because this 4.47 million that could be at the top of our existing budget right now is something that can't be recouped, right? But because it wasn't necessary at the time, we did very honest calculations, and because of that, because we did not need to go up to the tax levy or above it, there's a $4.4 million that was not levied for taxes throughout all of these years. So had we not done this, our current budget would have been 4.47 million more than it is right now, right? So now we are in 23-24. We went to the tax levy cap, and for 24-25, we are also going to the cap. We are not exceeding the cap. You'll find a lot of districts in the area right now are exceeding the cap. And there may come a time where we have to exceed the cap, right? But that time is not now, and we try to get our voter confidence that when it is not necessary, we didn't do it. All right, here are our enrollment counts. We have our actual and then projected, keeping in mind that 28-29, these children in kindergarten have not been born yet, right? So these estimations are as accurate as we possibly can based on census data. But for 24-25, you'll see we're at 2358. We're moving to 2380. We're seeing a steady increase again in enrollment over time. And this does not account for the numbers in current housing that is being developed that we're not really sure what we're going to yield. Okay, next. So, my predecessor said every student K-11 will have the opportunities afforded our graduating seniors. I would like to say that the 2 young superintendents here will have more opportunities afforded to them than our current seniors. That is our goal, and we use that as our star. Our programs and our services are the benchmark for our success. And all our programs are available under, this is really neat, the Curriculum and Instruction tab on the website. If you look at academic departments, you could see all of the programs that we have K-12 in there. We encourage you to do so. And that is it. Good? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We encourage you to be informed voters when you go out. The next phase that we're going to talk about is a proposition. The first proposition is going to be for that budget. So people are going to be asked to vote on the budget. Vote for the budget. Vote on the budget. But we have a proposition for a project at Byram Hills High School called Lights Learning Action. Yeah, you can keep going through these. The Coman Hill, Wampus, and HCC libraries, as you can see, have been redone. This is the library at the high school. You can keep going. This is the current conditions at the high school. Continue. And the lecture hall. Still very much like the 60s when it was created. We are proposing the Learning Commons, which will be a reconstruction of this entire section of library, lecture hall, and main hallway to become a Learning Commons. This will be the rendition for the lecture hall. Here will be the rendition for the kiosk area, the hub, and this will be the renditions of the library. We are going to have a community night on May 14th, asking the community to come out to allow Byram Hills to use money from the capital reserve to fund this project. This is money that has been put into a capital reserve expressly for this purpose. And we're also counting on the Byram Hills Education Foundation donations for this project. Part of the project in the following year will be the second turf field at the high school. And then following that, in completion of September 2027, lights on all of our fields and courts. And so we would ask that everybody become informed voters to go out. We have Proposition 1, which will be the school budget. Proposition 2, which will be Lights, Learning, and Action. And then there will be the election of 2 board seats. We have 2 current board members who are running for current seats, and we also have another person from the community who's running. So 3 people going for 2 seats. And I would ask that you become an informed voter. And thank you so much for your time and consideration. In a ton of time spent. This is like Thanksgiving dinner, right? All of the preparation for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then we just do it in 20 minutes. All right, so just a reminder, 3.28% tax levy increase, 3.75 budget to budget at $103,464,726. Thank you, and thank you to my 2 assistants today. We are now going to go and set up the 5th grade orientation from Wampus to HC Crittenden.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.